check. So recording is on now. So I suggest we get started indeed, as you suggested already, Dan. The article sharing framework. Perhaps some of you had noticed it already. It was launched or announced to the industry at the end of April. And since then, we've set up bi-weekly sessions, webinars, workshops to familiarize everyone in the industry with this, these technical processes described in this framework. This is the first workshop we're doing, and we're very happy and glad to have you all here today. So we'll be recording the session, so everyone interested can go and visit the ASF page on the STM website to learn more. And if you have any feedback on the way we've structured this today, we would much like to hear of it. The agenda for today, I will first talk a couple of minutes talking about why we have developed the article sharing framework, so the rationale for developing it, and some high-level notes about what it is exactly. We thought it would be helpful to then do a round of introductions to understand who we've got on the phone, of course, so you also know who we are, and also to get some insight into why you're interested in this session, what you want to get out of it, etc. Dan will then follow up with talking about what is required for implementation. There's a lot of resource material available on the website. He will point you to it. He will walk you through the implementation guide and give some insights on the current status of the framework and the timelines that we're on. We also had developed a proof of concept, a working prototype, really, which the ACS very kindly and skillfully put together, which we hope will provide further insight into how platforms will use the information that we publishers make available under the framework. And of course, we then have time for questions and answers and discussions, but you're welcome to interrupt as well. We would much like this to be an as much interactive session as possible. Dan, do you have anything to add?
No, that was great. I'll comment that the URI, the URL at the upper right in pink here has a letter that is truncated. So the URL, full URL ends with ASF, not just AS. So we'll correct that in the next slide.
Good point. Good point.
So that was my mistake.
I didn't spot it, then, so glad you did. So about the framework, I think we need to start giving some context here. So in 2019, EU Directive on Copyright in the Digital Single Market was adopted and came into force. Its Article 17 specifically deals with platforms that are typically commercial by nature and which store and give access, public access to a large amount of protected works. With Article 17, these platforms have become liable for the content they host, unless they get authorization from rights holders, so publishers, for instance, through a license, or by making best efforts to ensure the unavailability of protected works. Article 17 presents thereby an opportunity for publishers to improve copyright compliance and ensure a better experience for platform users. It's thus for publishers and platforms to work together. It's in light of this that the STM put together a working group under STEC to develop the technical processes needed to help publishers provide the relevant and necessary information to platforms. This is something publishers are obliged to do under Article 17. They help in turn platforms to fulfill their obligation and ensure the unavailability of protected works. And these processes are described in the article sharing framework. To provide the relevant and necessary information, publishers are required to embed metadata tags in the PDF content in machine actionable form. This is the DOI and the journal article version, the JAV. This is tried and tested, and several publishers have been doing this for a number of years already. Secondly, publishers are required to deposit sharing policy indicators with Crossref. These indicators are, again, machine actionable, and point to policy pages describing the permissions. The framework has been designed for platforms covered by the new obligations set by Article 17. This concerns online content sharing service providers, the OCSSPs, as they are referred to in the directive. That is, platforms that are typically commercial in nature and that make available large amounts of content to the public. So this excludes personal websites, blogs, and institutional repositories. The DOI in a journal article version can be embedded in a journal article PDF. However, as part of the framework, publishers are required to deposit sharing policy indicators for content that typically does not bear a Creative Commons license. And as such, the framework applies specifically to subscription and open archive material. Publishers decide themselves whether they will make this information available for their front files or for their back files too. Though first focus is and probably should be on getting this up and running for new content, as that is what is shared most. As part of the framework, publishers choose from a carefully defined set of STM sharing policies, and then we'll provide some further insight into this in a second. And this is really important. Having publishers coalesce around this limited set of policies is incredibly important to keep matters manageable for platforms. I want to stress here that the framework is very simple yet pragmatic, and you'll find that out in a second. All information provided is machine identifiable and as such can be easily implemented and used by platforms to check article shareability automatically in real time. The framework is also scalable. It can be implemented at low or zero cost, and it's available to anyone. The framework is built using existing industry technology and practices. And despite limited in number, the STM sharing policies that we've predefined really enable publishers to set the policies precisely the way they want for their content. And as publishers rally around this limited set of policies, it ensures implementation by platforms is manageable. And that is of great importance. And lastly, I want to stress that the framework is not an upload filter. Platforms choose themselves whether or not to use the information obtained through the framework. The framework cannot prevent this from happening. So I think I now skip bullet 4, which was to say that any information expressed through the framework and any answer that the framework presents to the platform is unambiguous. It's always clear-cut information or an answer that is provided to the platform, whether to allow or not to allow the upload of an article. Now, I recognize this is quite a high level and short summary into the framework. If you require additional information, so further background details, I really recommend you to also view the recording of the webinar that we did 2 weeks ago, if that's helpful for yourself or for your colleagues. Dan, did I miss anything here that you feel I should have addressed?
No, I think that was a good intro. Thanks, Esther.
Should I stop sharing? Do you want to take over?
Sure. I think what I'd like to do next is do a round of introductions.
Oh, here it is. Yeah.
Oh, great. Good. It's important that this is a dialogue. This workshop is not intended to be a one-way information push, but we want to meet your information needs and get to know what information you're needing. So let's start going around and introduce yourself, where you're from, what role or perspective are you coming from for this article sharing framework? What are your goals for this workshop, and how familiar are you? So any combination of those answers would be helpful context, and we can adapt the rest of our workshop to try to fit your needs. Okay, so I'm Dan O'Brien. I'm with American Chemical Society. I lead a publishing technology group, and I've been involved with this work group for about 18 months, I think. And it's been a great experience, and we're happy to be here with you. I'm going to just read off the top of my screen, if that's okay. Next to me is Sylvia.
Hi, Dan. Sylvia Sarah here. I work for Springer Nature. Hi, Hester. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
And and I'm director of rights licensing and permissions. And yeah, it would be good to understand in how the SCM framework works, so I can understand when our third parties use our content, what information we can provide to them, and if they want to share our information. So it's all more background that can help me with licensing opportunities going forward.
Okay, so how it works, general background. Great. Thanks, Sylvia. Max.
Hi. Oops. Hi. Maxine Smith. Or Max. I work for the Geological Society of London. We're already, I don't know if Esther remembers, but a few years ago we chatted about how we can share it, or how I can share it. Sorry.
Yeah, oh gosh,
Okay.
that was a long time ago, Max.
Yes, it was. So we're on there listed, our sharing policy is linked to from that website. And we wanted to take it further. And so this is great that it's come along now. And I'm the person who speaks the typesetter and the content platform, who's Highwire for us. So I'm the one sort of doing all the technical stuff and then telling everyone else in the organization what we need to do. And try and make it easy for them so we can get on board quickly. So my goal is I've already got some questions, so to have those questions answered in the workshop, but also any others that come along as well.
Great. Thanks, Maxine.
That's right.
Next up, Hadley.
Yes, you got it. I'm Hadley Leach. I'm with Walters Kluwer Health. I'm a senior production manager. So I'm here for the demo. There's a sort of large appetite in the organization to implement this, and it's my task to figure out how to do that.
We're here to help you.
Good.
That's great to hear. Okay, thank you. Sanandran, did I have that right?
Yes. Hi, this is Sujata Anandan. I am from IEEE. Hi. It's my second time here. I was there for the webinar. It was very, very helpful. Actually, it looks simple, but you have to really dwell into it to understand all the nuances of it. So the webinar really helped us a lot with certain questions. And then today I want to see what's more going to be there for the workshop. So we're also looking for the Crossref part of it. Like, I'm not sure when that will be ready. We need some more attributes for us to submit to Crossref, isn't it? So I'm not sure when that will be ready. So if you could let us know, is that you guys will do it, or Crossref will be responsible to answer that question?
We will talk through the next steps, and that involves Crossref. And their step we're expecting will be coming this summer or early fall.
Sure. Okay.
But there are steps that publishers can do now. So we'll talk through that. Good. Thank you.
Sure. Welcome.
Vincent.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vincent Lizzie. I work at Taylor & Francis. We have been kind of involved with the article sharing framework, and we're at the point where we're trying to plan our implementation, outline the requirements for our online platform, which is Adapon. And we're kind of interested in kind of participating in this discussion, getting some of our own questions answered, and also hearing what other implementers are thinking.
Great. Thank you, Vincent. And I know Vincent's being modest, but he's been a huge contributor to the framework already, and I really appreciate his help. Maria.
Hi, everyone. I'm a researcher from Portugal, from the academia, and I'm starting to use STM. So I want to learn a lot more because I'm a new beginner to this old framework. So I'm eager to learn more. So, okay, thank you.
Great.
And then I'm guilty. I didn't introduce myself. I'm very sorry about that. I'm Esther Hoover. I'm from Elsevier. I'm based in Amsterdam. I'm actually, I was always in the product group, and actually since June 1st, I'm being seconded to the publishing division, where I'll be an executive publisher for at least 6 months. But that aside, I've been chairing the stack group that's been responsible for developing the article sharing framework, and which also explains why I'm here today. And again, like Dan, we're very grateful for Vincent's input in all of this work, but also to you, Dan. So that's what I wanted to say as well. A goal
Great.
for the workshop is that we really help everyone on the call get a clearer picture of what the article sharing framework is and what it entails to implement, and also that we can help during this implementation at any point in time, really.
Right. So the format of this workshop, this is meant to be a dialogue. I will put up a slide deck that will look similar to the one that some of you may have seen in a prior webinar, but the intent here is not to run through it and just me talking. I would welcome you to stop me, ask questions along the way. That's the purpose of this workshop, is to facilitate a dialogue and exchange and answer questions as we go along. So we'll talk through some information just using a PowerPoint as a guide. I'll also walk through an implementation guide, and I would like to walk through a proof of concepts demo to just illustrate the concepts. And like I said, along the way, please chime in anytime with questions. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. Bear with me. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint now?
Yes.
We can, Dan.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so at its core, the article sharing framework, as Esther described, is intended for primarily for research articles. It complements some existing license conveyance that's in place for many publishers for open access content. And we'll talk about that. But so this is intended for primarily for subscription articles. At its core, publishers will put some information into the article PDF and into Crossref. This would be machine accessible information, and then platforms will extract it out again. And we'll talk about each one. The publishers will add the DOI and the journal article version to the PDF. So a lot of publishers are already doing this, and this is the first step. And as a publisher, if you're not doing this yet, this is something you can do now. This is something you could take steps immediately to start doing. It's very straightforward. There's two ways to encode this information. One way is to put those fields into the article PDF's XMP metadata section. Here's a screenshot of what that looks like through Adobe. It's very straightforward to do this as you're creating articles, or as you're delivering articles. The journal article version can be added also to the DOI hyperlink. The reason there's two methods here, we found that the XMP metadata section, option 1 here, sometimes can be lost along the way by the time a platform intends to load the article. Also, older formats of PDF sometimes do not support XMP. So adding the JAV to a DOI hyperlink is an alternative way to convey this information for the platform. And last thing is when to add this information. As Esther said, I think a first step is really to start adding this information to the PDF when it's published, when it's generated. Alternately, publishers could inject this information to an existing PDF as it's being delivered to an end user. ACS is doing both, and we can talk about the logic that we came up with to handle this. But for new content, as we generate new content, we add these markers, and actually our proof of concept will show this later. And also for existing content, our delivery system, which is Literatum, will inject these markers if they're missing. I'm going to pause here. Questions?
Hello. Oh.
Hi. Yes.
Hi, sorry, my screen's being a bit slow. Hi, it's Max here. So you mentioned AM and VOR. What about
Yes.
corrected versions of records, the CVOR?
Good question. Thank you. Let me go back to this. The framework right now is using only a subset of the JAV NISO recommendations, just these three values. I know there is a NISO working group forming around an update to JAV. So if they produce some new values that the framework will need to accommodate, that will be a later change to the framework. But right now, it's just the VOR, the AM, and the AO.
Okay, I thought NISO already had the CVOR.
They do. They have other values defined besides these three, but these are the only three that this framework is using.
Ah, right, I get it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Super. Yeah, you mentioned that because I emailed you. I don't know if you got the email last week. I emailed you. So basically, yeah, I think you just said the Literatum platform will be able to inject that stuff at delivery. We can obviously get that data in the PDFs at production, but
yes.
Did you also say that Literatum will inject it automatically?
I believe we asked for an enhancement to Literatum to do this several years ago. I don't know whether that has made it to their core platform or whether you would need to ask them to add the same functionality for your implementation.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions?
I just wanted to say that this is work that publishers already can start doing. As I mentioned in my introduction, a bunch of publishers have been doing this for several years already, though that's only the XMP tag that they're doing. So
particularly this, right?
Yes, so this is in place for 7 big publishers already. So this being Springer Nature, Wiley, Taylor & Francis, the American Chemical Society, Elsevier, AIP, and IOP. So they're doing this. Some tag the AM and the VOR, some tag additional versions. Elsevier right now tags the VOR only, but this is stuff that we can do already, which helps platforms tremendously in terms of identifying the article. It's not yet enough information to then also know what they can do with it, but identifying the article is the first step. So this is something that, yeah.
The sooner we can get article PDFs with these identifiers out into the hands of the public, the sooner the framework can expand and support the sharing policies.
So I then actually have a question to representatives of IEEE and Wolters-Kluwer and Geological Society. So Max and Hadley, are you already tagging information in XMP, and would you be interested to right now also start including the JAV information in XMP? And by when?
I just emailed my typesetter last week trying to get this in.
Oh, sorry.
After your webinar.
Good.
Yeah,
Good deal.
we do. Yeah, this is Sujata from IEEE. We are already embedding article DOI even before the article sharing framework. It was part of our production process.
Okay,
But JAV, we need to add JAV information, which will be part of this ASF implementation. Yeah.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
If it helps you, the way ACS implemented this is we added this as a step 2 of our article production. So we generate the PDF, and then right away we update the PDF to add this information. So we didn't actually change the PDF composition or typesetting process itself. We just we add this information after the typesetting completes. Okay. Good questions and topics. Let's keep them coming, and I'll keep going unless there's other questions. So the other thing publishers will start doing before long is to deposit sharing policy indicators to Crossref. This will be similar to how many publishers are already depositing Creative Commons license URIs to Crossref, and we'll touch on that in a minute. But for this framework, we've identified 24 sharing policies using 4 sharing contexts. So different permutations of these 4 fields results in 48 different policies. A platform has signed and wants to display full text of the version of record to general access is 1 permutation. So these same permutations are in a resource spreadsheet that I'll show you later. This is an extract of it. And you can see we're showing that each permutation results in an indicator, which is actually a DOI, a policy DOI here on the side. What publishers will be doing is determining for their publisher-specific sharing policies, which of these sharing contexts do they want to allow? And then register those sharing policies for each article in Crossref. As an example, for Elsevier and ACS, you can see that there's different amounts of green here, green being what's allowed in different contexts. We have the same sharing contexts in the framework: abstract, full text, version of record, platform, signed or not signed. Elsevier allows more sharing and more contexts, so they have different amounts of green compared to ACS. So Elsevier may be depositing more sharing policies to Crossref for each of those articles. So a given article DOI can have multiple sharing policy DOIs. This is a bit different from how we have been handling open access Creative Commons licenses. Usually there's only 1 registered with the given article. In this framework, a publisher can register multiple sharing policy DOIs. For example, this one will have 3. the same functionality that's in use today for handling licenses in Crossref also supports the article sharing framework with embargoed permissions. There's a start date attribute that's available. So I'm showing two examples down here, one with a policy DOI without a start date, one with a start date. Both of them can be registered for the same article. What that means is effective immediately, policy number 33 is effective. And then upon July 6th of 2022, policy number 2 becomes effective as well. Like I mentioned earlier, there is a relationship between what we're doing here in this framework and what many publishers are doing with Chorus and depositing a Creative Commons to this license to the same area in Crossref. So I'm going to ask who is depositing Creative Commons or other open access licenses to Crossref today in support of Chorus?
We're depositing the license ref for Creative Commons, but not, we haven't linked up with Chorus yet.
I didn't catch that last part, but not what?
So yeah, we're depositing the license ref tag for Creative, but we haven't linked up with Chorus yet.
Okay, no, that's fine. I think by depositing it to Crossref, then Chorus retrieves it for Crossref. So that's great.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yes, Briganator. So we are depositing the open access CCBY only to Crossref.
Great.
And Tina, if we are.
Go ahead, Vincent.
I mean, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah. You're fine.
Yeah, so we do it too, like IEEE does it too. We submit to Crossref the license information. Yeah.
Good to hear. And Vincent, you as well for Spring on Nature?
Yes, Devin Francis, we deposit the Creative Commons licenses for array content. Do note that we use the applies to equals version of record, and with the assumption that that also applies to earlier versions of the manuscript.
So this is good news because your publishers that are already doing this for Chorus for open access content is building on the same framework, the same structure that you're already using. You can use that to start depositing these sharing policy DOIs in the same manner.
I have a question then.
Yeah, please.
So in the prior, I think slides or in the webinar, in the documentation, there was an attribute attached with the license ref, right, to submit this information?
Yes.
I remember there was an attribute. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the applies to, I think.
Yes.
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 I'll need to update these slides to show that. The original intent of the slides were to keep it pretty high level, but now I think we're getting to implementation. So you're right. I should reflect the applies to going forward. You'll see that in the implementation.
Okay, because I thought Crossref didn't have that attribute in their current schema, so that needs to be added, or they need to upgrade the schema to add that attribute. Is it true?
Yes. So that's the nature of the work that Crossref needs to do. They actually do have an applies to, but it's limited to only a few values right now. So the work they need to do is to open it so our framework can make use of it.
So, right now you're saying we can submit the URLs even without the applies attribute.
Technically, there's nothing to stop you from submitting without the applies to attribute today, right? But we are trying to get the applies to in place so that platforms know which license tags to look for within Crossref. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
I have a couple of questions. They're similar. They relate to Crossref.
Sure.
Can we, if assuming we know what policy numbers apply to our content, can we insert the license ref tag now, even if nothing's going to sort of happen with it at Crossref's end, if they have work to do? Can we do that? Can we deposit it now if we are able?
I am going to take that as an action item to get you an answer. That's a good question. Is there any harm in depositing before the applies to is in place or not? So let me find an answer for you on that.
Okay. Not that I'm going to be able to do this in the next week, but would it be useful to know?
Sure. Okay. No.
And also, so obviously, so say we can put the tag in our XML and it goes downstream to Crossref, but can Crossref actually, because yeah, as the previous questioner said, Crossref have some work to do. Are they? They've still got some work to do to be completely ready for this, but can they actually? Actually, maybe I've answered my own question. Presumably, yeah, they've got some work to do to sort this out, because I think I've got a case open with them because they're not displaying the correct article version in the data we're already sending. I don't know if anyone's got any more info on that.
Yeah. Are you referring to their open access, the open access licenses being deposited, or?
We already insert the journal article version in XML metadata that goes to them, but when you sort of go through their API to look at for an accepted method with AN, it's showing up as VOR. So,
oh, that's strange. Okay.
Yeah. so Crossref have got a seminar later today, so I'm going to query them on that. But that might be linked to this updated schema as well.
Yeah, it might be. I know right now, I think they limit it to only 3 values. So maybe that's what's happening behind the scenes.
Thanks. Okay.
Okay, so thanks, Maxine. I will get you an answer about whether you could start early on depositing.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Other questions? Okay. I don't think we have folks from platforms here today. No. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on the platform side of this. This is just for awareness of what platforms will be doing with the information that publishers put in. So platforms will be extracting that information from the XMP or from the DOI hyperlink. Platforms should be creating an accept list of the specific policies that apply to their sharing contexts, and they'll be looking for those sharing policies in Crossref for every given article that they come across. And we'll have to also make sure platforms look for and abide by any start date, any applied start date that would be handled as an embargo. So that was the framework in a nutshell. What we're going to do is look at the implementation guide a bit and also go through a proof of concept walkthrough. Let's change my sharing to show a different screen here. All right, can you see my other screen now?
Yep.
Okay, great. I think most of you have already been here. This is the location that we are intending to publish our information about the framework. We have a working directory somewhere else for information that's still being worked on, but come here for anything that's been vetted and published, including how to use an implementation guide and a spreadsheet that I'll walk through here in a second, and the FAQs. The implementation guide is it's a Word document. I'm looking at it through Google Docs here. The table of contents kind of follows mostly the slide deck we just looked at. And I'll go through a few specific sections, maybe a bit more detail. Again, these are the only 3 journal article versions that we're supporting in the framework at this point, unless it's determined later that a change is needed to support more article versions. For platforms, we give some indicators about how they could actually find the DOI hyperlink. We're recommending that put the DOI hyperlink on the first page if possible, and that would give more cues to the platform on which DOI hyperlink that would be. Also, there's an additional parameter to add to that hyperlink. The reason being is if a article PDF has multiple DOI hyperlinks. ACS PDFs have multiple DOI hyperlinks. There's a lot of DOI hyperlinks in the references section. So to identify which hyperlink platform should use and decode, we're asking publishers to also add this parameter to the DOI hyperlink that refers to the article itself. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Here's examples of how that could look. And I'll show you a PDF in a minute that does this for real. But what's displayed on the PDF could be just the text of the DOI, but the hyperlink underneath could have additional information, such as the JAV and this relative site as. Okay on this?
I have a question just for
Sure.
those in the call. I think maybe it was Max who mentioned the CVOR article version.
Yeah.
Is anybody already putting CVOR or other NISO JAV indicators other than version of record into the PDF XMP metadata currently?
I actually suspect that it's Spring Nature is doing this. I can check my slide. I'll get back to you on this session.
Yeah, going on from what Vincent was asking. So we
Yeah.
put CVOR in a XML, which goes downstream. We don't put it in our PDF, and I think after what Dan said, that this isn't going to CVOR isn't going to work with this framework. I think we'll just stick with VOR, even if it is a COR, which seems slightly dodgy. But I don't know what choice we have really. If it's not going to work with CVOR, then we've got to stick with VOR for the PDF, in the PDF metadata.
So Maxine, do you have a lot of articles out there already with CVOR?
Yeah, we got, well, I wouldn't say a lot. We have a
okay, yes, some.
We have
okay.
a few, yeah.
Okay.
So I've got the table in front of me. I can share it in a second. Should I show it in a second so everyone can see
Yeah, Esther, go ahead.
what parties continue? Share my screen. So actually, Dan, you are tagging the SMR as well. It's the submitted manuscript. So that ACS tags since 2017. These are the versions being tagged. As mentioned, ACS also tags the back files the moment they are downloaded from their platform by users. Please ignore those numbers for a little while. I mean, these are from September last year, so they're quite different now. And actually, Dan, you also distinguish between types of files within a JAV.
Yeah.
I don't think we've addressed that in the integration doc, have we?
No, I see that as a publisher-specific implementation here, where ACS recognizes different types of VORs. So we have another attribute that helps us distinguish which type of ACS VOR it is. Yeah. Is it the issue version? Is it what we call the ASAP or pre-issue version? But that's a level the framework does not need to understand.
No.
Yeah.
No, agree. But yeah, I just called it out because it's commented in there. So you have AIP tagging VOR and AM since 2017, Elsevier tagging VORs and proofs, IAP, VOR and AM, and then Spring and Nature, I've got CVOR there as well. Nature Journals tagged since 2019, Spring Nature Journals since 2016. So Taylor Francis and Wiley also the VR and the AM. And some time ago, it was said like, okay, this feature that Literatum and you developed at ACS, perhaps that can be extended for other add-on clients as well. So quite a bunch of, sorry.
Yeah, so one thing I want to point out is that in addition to the JAV, the article DOI also needs to be determined. So I know for ACS, even for the accepted manuscript and the submitted manuscript under review, even though we put those JAVs into those PDFs, we don't know the DOI, article DOI at that point. So it has a different identifier. So those at this point, those PDFs would not work for the framework because there's no article DOI established yet. I am going to bring up our proof of concept for illustration purposes.
We've got 10 more minutes. And
yep. Okay. So this is a working proof of concept. It is not intended to be an application that platforms can take and plug in and use as is. This is meant to be a simulation, a working simulation to show platforms that this is feasible. Okay, so this will work on real PDFs that we have. So the simulation will first choose whether the platform in the simulation is one that is signed or not signed to voluntary principles. And for this simulation, we'll choose one that has signed. I'm going to upload, this is a PDF, one of ACS's recently published PDFs that I downloaded maybe a week ago or so. And we're going to upload this PDF to the proof of concept. And within that 1 second or 2 seconds, the PDF was uploaded and two things were done. The DOI was extracted from the XMP as well as the JAV. And the DOI was extracted from a URL as well as the JAV. So now that the platform knows 2 of those 4 contexts, they know what type of platform they are, and from the PDF, they know what version it is. The other 2 contexts are the intended audience scope, and we will choose research collaboration group and an intent to display the full text or share the full text. So in this simulation, this simulates a lookup to Crossref, and there was a match for these 4 contexts result in policy 29, and the simulation says policy 29 is registered in Crossref for that article. In contrast, if we go back and we make a different choice here, if the platform wants to share that article publicly, that would be policy 25, which is not registered in Crossref for the article. Only 29, policy 29 is registered in Crossref for that article. So there's no match and no sharing is permitted. So the purpose of this proof of concept is to demonstrate the feasibility with a small amount of code that this is not difficult to implement on behalf of the platforms. We also are making the source code available for anybody who wants to download it and make use of it. So it uses some Apache free libraries and classes. Okay. The last thing I want to acclimate you to is the resource spreadsheet. This is, can you see my spreadsheet here? Okay. This is like a master spreadsheet that we use to help determine which sharing policies equate to which policy DOIs. And what will publishers do with this? I think one of my favorite tabs is right here, the builder tool. So a publisher can determine, think about their own sharing policies and what would they like to register for each subscription article. And you can choose a combination of fields, full text, and determine which policy that is. Here's the DOI, here's the policy description. And publishers can use this as a lookup tool to determine the set of policies that describe their own publisher sharing approach. For ACS, I think there are 3 article sharing framework policies that we would deposit to Crossref for every subscription article to cover our approach. I think Esther Elsevier has maybe a six or so policy DOIs that you'd be registering.
Yeah, something like that.
It depends on each publisher's general sharing policy, how many sharing policy DOIs you would be registering. But this is a way to do a lookup if you want to do a drop-down choice. Or if you are a table-oriented person, you can use this view too. Okay. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and ask for other questions. What information do you need? Can we make available for you?
It's a complex menu of sharing possibilities. And I'm curious as to how that's been implemented by folks using them, whether it's generally by publisher, if a publisher or society determines 2 or 3 policies that apply to all articles that are not open access, or if you are actually assigning these on an article by article basis, or even a journal by journal basis. I'm just trying to imagine how to manage the Crossref feed. If, it varies by article in some cases.
I could answer for ACS. We have a consistent sharing policy across all of our journals. So we would have the same set of sharing policies for all subscription articles. I think other publishers may have situations where they might have different sharing policies based on portfolios or even a journal. So some publishers may have to use different combinations of these sharing policies for each of those portfolios if their sharing policies are different. Does that answer your question?
It is good guidance. Thank you.
I would not expect this to be an article by article decision, though, in most cases. Other questions, other topics? What support or information would assist you in building this out? I have an action item for Maxine. Anything else?
Sorry, did you mention me?
Yes. Sorry, Maxine. I was just mentioning that I have an action item to get back to you about your question.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I was just sort of chuckling to myself, thinking we might have more questions for you when we attempt to use the grid, and what questions we might get asked and might not be able to answer. But I get the point of not signed an agreement or signed an agreement, and then I get the do you want to share the full text or the abstract? But then I think there might be not a sticking point, but people might be saying, oh, do we want to share with, I guess the choice is, do you want to share with everyone on the planet, or do you just want to share with a collaborative research group?
I know we're running out of time, but I know that's been a question before about the definition of each of these. So that's the spreadsheet does contain the current definitions for all these, if that's a helpful guide for you.
Yeah, I think that's my next action.
Okay.
Good. So thank you all very much for attending this session, for your interest in the framework, for all your questions. Dan and I will think about how we can take this discussion forward, if there is a way within STM that we can continue this discussion, either by setting up a dedicated email group or perhaps a Slack channel. We'll find out what's the best way we can do this under STM. So we'll be back in touch, and of course the recording of this session will be made available on the ASF page of STM. So thank you very much, and have a good day, everyone. And thank you, Dan. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Dan.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.